Indian Ministry of External Affairs welcomed the release of 8 nationals who were jailed in Qatar. The Indian government stated that 7 of them have returned to the country. New Delhi appreciated Doha's decision to enable the release and the homecoming of these nationals. The Indian men were arrested by Qatari authorities back in 2022 and were kept in detention without specifying the crimes committed by them. In November, these 8 Indians who worked for Dahra Global Technologies and Consultancy Services were handed a death sentence. In December, a Qatar court decided to reduce the sentences after the acceptance of an appeal by the Indian government. The police and local authorities in the Indian capital of New Delhi have been gearing up for the proposed Delhi Chalo March on February 13th, called by many farmers' unions. The Delhi police has enforced the prohibitory orders banning large gatherings under Section 144 of the Criminal Procedure Code across the city in order to prevent any chaos on the streets. According to the previous order, the entry of tractors, commercial vehicles carrying protesters are barred from entering New Delhi from the state of Uttar Pradesh. The order will remain in effect till March 11th unless it is withdrawn earlier. In the state of Haryana, the state police has sealed its border with neighbouring state of Punjab by placing concrete blocks and anti-riot vehicles. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi, along with Sri Lankan President Ranil Wickremesinghe and the Prime Minister of Mauritius, Pravin Jugnauth, launched the Unified Payment Interface or UPI in Sri Lanka and the RuPay card in Mauritius through a virtual event. Prime Minister Modi, in his virtual address, said that both Sri Lanka and Mauritius will benefit from UPI, and this launch is a major boost to the global vision of the Global South. Prime Minister Modi further called it a special day and said that the UPI is performing its new responsibility and that is uniting partners with India. He further laid emphasis on fintech connectivity and cross-border transactions and also cross-border connections. A series of Israeli airstrikes on southern Gaza town of Rafah killed at least 52 people. As per Gaza officials, the strikes hit 14 houses and 3 mosques in different parts of Rafah. Mediators held new talks in Cairo for a pause in fighting and the release of around 130 hostages that Israel says are still in Gaza, including 29 thought to be dead. Hamas seized over 200 hostages back on October 7th, and dozens were released during a one-week truce in November. Hamas's military wing on Sunday said that 2 hostages had been killed and 8 others seriously wounded in Israeli bombardment. The group's claim has not been independently verified yet. Two Israeli hostages that were rescued from Hamas captivity early this morning have arrived at a hospital on the outskirts of Tel Aviv. The Israeli military says they were held in Rafah. It identified the men as Fernando Simon Mammon and Luis Har. The Israeli forces say both men were kidnapped by Hamas from the kibbutz Nir Yizak in the October 7th cross-border attack. The rescue took place early on Monday in the southern border town of Rafah. The Iranian foreign minister is visiting ally countries in West Asia, ramping up support against Israeli actions in Gaza. On Sunday, Hossein Amir Abdullahian met Syrian President Bashar al-Assad in Damascus. Speaking to the media, the Iranian foreign minister said that Israeli actions won't go without a response. The Syrian foreign minister, Meghdad, also raked up the occupation of Syrian territories by foreign forces and said that Syria is ready to pay the price for liberating all its territories. Last week, the Iranian minister also visited Lebanon, where he met with senior officials and also reiterated the support to Hezbollah. As Iran continues to reach out to its regional allies in West Asia amid the war, Saudi Arabia has now warned Tel Aviv of grave repercussions. These grave repercussions come if Rafah is invaded by the Israeli armed forces. After issuing a stern warning, Saudi's foreign ministry also renewed its call for an immediate ceasefire and urged the UN Security Council to hold an urgent session over Israel's armed offensive in the Gaza Strip. US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin is back in the hospital again following symptoms of an emergent bladder issue. The Pentagon has said that the White House has been informed about the development. For the time being, Austin has transferred his duties to Deputy Defense Secretary Kathleen Hicks. This comes in less than 2 months after his secretive hospital visit in December, for which he was criticized. The Defense Secretary came under widespread criticism last month when he went to the hospital for several days for a prostate cancer surgery. He had kept the hospital visit a secret from top government officials, including US President Joe Biden. In a rare Super Bowl Sunday session, a US foreign aid package including $60 billion for Ukraine passed a key procedural vote. It is now up to the Republican-led House to take it up, change it, or let it die. The $95 billion package includes funding for Israel's fight against Hamas and for key strategic ally Taiwan. But a majority of it would help pro-Western Ukraine restock its depleted ammunition, weapons and other crucial needs. 18 Republicans backed the legislation after Trump, the dominant Republican White House candidate, made efforts into killing the aid bill and escalated his attacks on the NATO military alliance. US President Joe Biden told Israel's Prime Minister that a military operation in Rafah should not happen without measures to ensure the safety of civilians. Rafah, on the border with Egypt, has remained the last refuge for Palestinians who are fleeing Israel's relentless bombardment elsewhere in the Gaza Strip in its war against Hamas. The US, the UN and many governments have voiced concerns over Netanyahu's plans to invade the city. Some 1.4 million people have crowded in Rafah, with many living in tents. Supplies are scarce, including food, water and medicine. Conservative Prime Minister Alexander Stubb won Sunday's Finnish presidential elections, assuming a role that has gained importance in light of the country's NATO membership and rising tensions with neighbouring Russia. Relations between Moscow and Helsinki deteriorated following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, prompting Finland to drop decades of military non-alignment and join NATO in April last year. Russia, with whom Finland shares a 830-mile border, swiftly warned of countermeasures. A horrific incident in Kansas City has sent shockwaves across the United States, where a mother allegedly mistakenly put her 1-month-old infant in an oven for a nap and the baby died. The accused mother, Mariah Thomas, has been charged with endangering the child's welfare by the court of law. The charges were announced by the court on February 10th. The Kansas City police officials reached the crime scene after the horrific incident was reported on February 9th at 1:30 p.m. local time. According to the document, Mariah told her grandfather that she thought she put the child in her crib and she accidentally put her in the oven. If convicted, Thomas could face life imprisonment of 10 years, according to the state law. North Korea has successfully developed a new ballistic control system for a multiple rocket launcher. According to state media, the Academy of Defense Science conducted a test firing of a 240 mm caliber controllable multiple rocket launcher shell. The latest test marked the first time that Pyongyang unveiled a test of these controllable 240 mm shells. North Korea said the latest improvement will help reevaluate the strategic value and utility of this rocket launcher. It will also increase the role of such a weapon in battlefields. The launcher is known to be deployed near the border to target South Korea's broader capital area. Heavy rains caused waterlogging in some areas of Dubai. Cars were trapped in stagnant water as the city's drainage systems are unable to cope with the downpour. The Emirati National Center of Meteorology issued a weather warning for many cities in the UAE until tomorrow morning. As a safety measure, authorities urged schools and businesses to switch to remote or work from home mode. According to a report by the International Data Corporation, an IT service provider, the spending on digital technology by Indian organization is likely to grow at 2 times the economy in 2024. As per the report, due to the growing digital infrastructure and the rise of artificial intelligence technologies, companies have no choice but to incorporate digital business models and increase their tech spending. The report also suggests that about 60% of Indian enterprises' revenue is expected to come from digital business models in the next 3 years. Apple is planning to settle a lawsuit that accused one tech startup of stealing its trade secrets related to computer chip technology. Apple and Rivos told the US District Court that they had signed a joint agreement to settle the case. The agreement allows Apple to examine the systems and recover any confidential data. Apple had sued Rivos in 2022. The tech giant had accused the company of hiring dozens of ex-Apple engineers and using their confidential information to develop competing system-on-chip technology. Dating apps have changed the way we date, pursue relationships and find love. One correct swipe on a dating app have led many to their happily ever after. However, there is one industry that's not feeling loved, and that is marriage consultation agencies. According to a report, a Japanese research firm says in Japan around 11 marriage agencies filed for bankruptcy, while another 11 marriage agencies shut down. The report further suggests that Japanese citizens are choosing dating apps over marriage consultation agencies to find their life partners. Another report suggests that 1 in every 4 couples who got married last year met using online dating apps. Tesla announced a $1,000 discount on select variants bought in February this year as it pursues its continuous production for efficiency policy. The company's website is now showing a pricing update announcing the new Model Y rear-wheel drives and long-range all-wheel drive prices reduced for deliveries through February 29th. Prices will increase by $1,000 or more on March 1st, as per reports. New bank loans in China jumped by more than expected to an all-time high in January as the central bank moved to shore up the sputtering economy, reinforcing expectations for more stimulus in the coming months. Policymakers have pledged to roll out further measures to support the weaker-than-expected post-COVID recovery in the world's second-largest economy amid a deep property crisis and prolonged stock market rout. Chinese lenders tend to front-load loans at the beginning of the year to get higher-quality customers and win market share. Commentary from New Zealand suggests the inflation challenge was still not over as the central bank cited broad financial pressure for retaining a restrictive monetary policy position. The Reserve Bank of New Zealand said the current inflation rate was 4.7% and it was still too high. The board's aim was to continue to slow it down to around 2%. Since the bank's last interest rate decision at the end of November, inflation has eased slightly, but the market has reduced expectations of near-term interest rate cuts following a surprisingly firm set of local jobs data that came out last week. In the commodities market, oil declined following last week's advance after Iran's foreign minister flagged the Israel-Hamas conflict could be moving closer to a diplomatic solution. Trading remained muted, with many Asian markets closed for the Lunar New Year holidays. Gold slipped on Friday and continued to lose its shine, pressured by elevated treasury yields. Investors await US inflation data for more clues on the timing of the Federal Reserve's interest rate cuts. A US judge ordered in a court filing that Tesla and SpaceX CEO Elon Musk has to testify in a probe by the US Securities and Exchange Commission concerning his 2022 acquisition of Twitter. The SEC is investigating whether Musk or anyone else committed securities fraud in 2022 as the billionaire began buying stock in Twitter and building a stake ahead of his leveraged buyout of the social media company. Musk closed his acquisition of Twitter in October 2022 in a deal worth roughly $44 billion and has since rebranded it X. Most Asian currencies moved in a tight range against the US dollar as market holidays across most of the region kept trading volumes limited, while the dollar fell slightly before key inflation data due next week. The Indian rupee trades flat before key consumer price index inflation data due tomorrow. India's inflation reading is expected to show inflation remaining sticky and comes just days after the Reserve Bank of India said it will remain hawkish to keep inflation in check. US President Joe Biden called on snack companies to stop shrinkflation, which is when businesses cut product sizes but keep prices the same, describing the practice as a rip-off. Since taking office, Biden has made a pitch for lower supermarket prices, pushed drug makers to lower insulin costs, hotel chains to reduce fees, and tried to diversify the meat packing industry after beef prices skyrocketed in the aftermath of the pandemic.